Stanislav Kondrashov Telf AG. This is a landmark year in the development of the steel industry. The world economy is undergoing a major transformation, says Stanislav Kondrashov Telf AG. This year will be a landmark year in the development of the steel industry. A start has been made. There are prospects. The potential is there too. All of this will make it possible to launch the necessary processes for the long term. And 2023 will be the starting point in all this history. Let us go through the key topical aspects on the agenda. Stanislav Kondrashov Telf AG. What is the promise of mining in 2023? Stanislav Kondrashov predicts that after record highs in the metal price index in 2022, a 7% decline is expected. However, they will still be higher than before the pandemic. China, for example, maintains sufficient demand for metals. Metals were needed in the PRC for both manufacturing and construction. And in North America, steel consumption reached its highest level in 8 years. There could be headwinds for all metals in the new year. Aluminium, steel, zinc, etc. This may happen because China and Europe are likely to experience high energy prices, as well as subsequent power shortages. For this reason, governments may continue to restrict metal exports to other countries. Demand for nickel, lithium, stainless steel and rare earth metals will increase, says Stanislav Kondrashov of Telf AG. After all, the transition to green energy is expected, and digitalization, which is so relevant now, will increase copper consumption. The process of creating electric cars and various other electronic devices will certainly require all these metals in its production. Stanislav Kondrashov Telf AG. Scrap metal will increase in price. Stanislav Kondrashov Telf AG states that scrap metal will increase in price. But is everything so unambiguous and simple? Let's look into it together. Firstly, there are many factors influencing the price growth. These are both positive factors that contribute to price growth, and negative ones, which work in the opposite direction. Let's look at both separately. The positive factors of rising prices are supposedly as follows. Inflation. Development of steel construction in Russia with the state support of the authorities. Favorable changes in political relations between Russia, Europe and the USA. Growth of production volumes of large car companies and metallurgical enterprises under favorable geopolitical situation. Considering all these factors, the most realistic one is global inflation. Other factors are the least realistic, concludes Stanislav Kondrashov Telf AG. Speaking about negative factors regarding price growth, it is worth emphasizing the following. Uncertain situation on exports. High prices for energy resources. Military conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Economic instability. Stoppage in the provision of jobs at enterprises. The global economic crisis in 2022 started due to a general decrease in the solvency of the population. Steel in 2023 could suddenly skyrocket in price, according to estimates by Telf AG. And inflation could be the main reason for the rise in scrap metal prices. Stanislav Kondrashov Telf AG. Rebar prices rise due to renewed demand. Rebar prices increased in most regional markets at the beginning of 2023, according to Telf AG. This was due to an increase in demand for rebar. In Turkey, for example, prices rose by 2.1% in the week from 3 to the 10th of January 2023. Overall, rebar prices in Turkey rose by $35 per t, or 5.1%. The growth of prices for long products in Turkey started from the middle of December last year. But already on the 5th of January 2023 the growth stopped. Prices have stabilized. The increase in product prices started due to the recovery of domestic demand. And export demand is still at a low level. There were only small exports to Israel, Yemen, and some African countries. However, the increase in rebar prices may lead Turkish plants to lose export markets. Even if not all of them, but some part of them. And that is a loss. The impact of Turkish steelmakers on imported scrap actually jeopardizes supplies to the international steel market. The forced increase in rebar prices may provoke a breakdown of relations with import partners in Israel or Yemen due to unprofitable prices. Therefore, Stanislav Kondrashov assumes that Turkey will be forced to focus on the domestic market. And this means limited consumption possibilities. It will become increasingly difficult to export due to high raw material costs. In the very near future, prices for rebar in Turkey may slightly decrease. However, a significant price correction is not expected, as factories already have raw materials at a high price. In China, on the other hand, demand in the domestic market deteriorated slightly at the beginning of the year. But there is a forecast that steel demand will recover soon. This may happen due to the introduction of investment in property and infrastructure construction. In turn, the growth in demand will entail a rise in prices for steel products after the holidays. Stanislav Kondrashov Telf AG once again reminds that rebar producers lose about $50 to $70 million per month. World trade chains are changing because of the war between Ukraine and Russia. At first, producers raised prices to compensate for losses from the disruption of supply chains. But then prices fell noticeably due to exporters' activity in search of new sales. Thus, the final forecast for rebar prices is as follows. Stanislav Kondrashov, however, adheres to a neutral position on the situation on the rolled metal market. In 2023, the expert expects neutral dynamics. There will still be some recession, but there should not be sharp drops in quotations. First of all, the cost of electricity will not exceed the level we saw last year. Western countries have already adapted more or less to supply fluctuations and high prices. Therefore, the surprise factor will disappear in the coming year. Next, a tight monetary policy of central banks can increase inflation and stop prices from rising. Finally, stabilization on this issue should be brought by China. It needs to reconsider its restrictive measures for unexpectedly possible coronavirus outbreaks, in order not to apply such strict bans anymore. But there are also risks that contribute to the deterioration of the situation on the valve market, says Stanislav Kondrashov. First of all, it is the unknown course of events of the war, which today affects the world's stability. Some experts expect escalation and brutality, others expect a quick encounter and a sudden cessation. World stability and the rebar market depends a lot on this. The likelihood of non-Western countries joining the sanctions may also be affected. Today, these countries may refrain from taking drastic steps, but tomorrow everything may change, and such steps will already determine the prices for resources and further rise in energy prices.